Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back on the Keys to Success. Of course, I'm your host and your teacher, your professor, Professor Ken. I'm definitely obliged and feel very privileged and honored to be able to teach you guys the things that I've learned over the years in my life. And today's lesson is going to be desire. But before I get into that lesson, please let me offer you the opportunity to log on to hiphoppk.com. That's right, hiphoppk.com, and join Game College. It's 48 classes there. Not only do you get my 48 classes, but you also get all my movies, you get my audio book, you get all my things that I've done over the years. All the intros and outros, everything is housed in this secret society, in this secret code that I'm going to give you once you join. It's only $14.95, and the $14.95 only covers the maintenance. So basically, you get everything for free. Desire. What is desire? Desire is hope. Desire is want. Desire is hunger. Yes, I said hunger, because if you really want something in life, if you really want to achieve anything in life, in the chapter, lesson 1, we taught you about purpose, knowing what you want. Lesson 2 was imagination. Imagine the things that you want. Now that you want them, imagine them, what you want. Envision them in your mind. And now lesson 3, which is most important, is that once you know what you want and you can imagine that what you want, you got to have a burning desire. You got to be hungry for that what you want. You got to really hope, and you got to really pray. You got to really see it and want it. You got to just it's got to be a desire so strong that it just burns up inside you to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve. Let me give you an example. I want you to imagine yourself in a basement for 4 days. You haven't eaten anything. 4 days in a basement with no food. Explain to me, after you imagine yourself being in the basement for 4 days, what do you think you have after 4 days? Exactly. You are hungry as hell. Your stomach begins to cramp up. You begin to saliva from the mouth. You begin to just really hallucinate in your mind because you're so hungry that you basically losing your mind. And it's nothing more that you want in life at that moment but some food. You want to eat. You eat a raw chicken. You eat a raw steak. You eat cold food. You eat cereal with water. You eat anything at that moment because you're hungry. And that's what desire is. The same way you will feel after being in the basement for 4 days. The same hunger that you feel after being in that precarious situation is the same hunger that you got to have for your desires and your goals. You got to be hungry. You got to really want it. It's got to be fire up under your feet. You got to be burning inside for the goals and the achievements that you want in life. Because if you don't burn for it, if you don't have that desire, you don't have that want and that hope, you're not going to achieve it. Some of the most successful men in the world who have accomplished some of the greatest things in the world, in business, in science, in politics, they had a burning desire to achieve these things that they achieved. They had an insatiable appetite. It was just so strong that they put everything behind their actions until they achieve those things that they want. And that's how you got to be. You have to be hungry. You got to imagine yourself being in that basement, not eating for 4 days, willing to eat anything that is put before you, because all you want to do is feel that hunger in your belly. And that's how you have to feel about life. You got to have that same hunger. You got to have that same desire. You got to have that appetite to succeed. You got to act like you haven't ate in months and days, and you just got to go after your goals. Like if you don't, you're going to die from starvation. Yes, that's what it's all about. I remember years ago, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use myself as an example for burning desire. Years ago when I was in prison, I'd say borderline illiterate. I could barely read, barely write. And I got a hold of a book called Trick Baby by Iceberg Slim. That led me to read Donald Goines, Street Players, and a whole host of other books. I don't want to name all of them, take up all the time. So I began to read these books. And as I began to read these books, I seen that these people were people like me, who were men from the streets. And I seen that they were able to tell stories. And I wanted to do that. I had such a desire that I began to study the GED. I learned how to read and write. I learned how to spell. I began to take other courses. I began to read other books. And eventually I enrolled in college because I wanted to be like these guys. I had a desire to write my own book. And most guys in prison, as you know, they all have a desire to write books, but I was one of those guys. So when I eventually made it to the camp, I began to write different publications. I would write out to the streets, and I would send to these different columns, these news columns, where these people would let you put your writings in the newspaper. They would allow prisoners to put their information or their little letters or their little writings in the newspaper. And I would write these papers, but all the time, little did I know, because I was hungry and because I knew that I wanted to be an author. All I was really doing, I was preparing myself because I was hungry and I was thirsty for this opportunity to become an author. I was writing these papers and sending these little stories out about politics and science and history and so on and so forth, and Martin Luther King and Minister Farrakhan, and anything I could write about, I would write and I would send it to these papers and I would do my little stories. And I learned how to write. I studied English 101. I learned the 5-paragraph forms. I learned how to construct a sentence. I learned about an introduction. I learned about the 3 points that you must use. I learned about the conclusion. And I began to write every day because I was hungry and I knew that I had a burning desire to become an author. Finally, I was released from prison. When I was released from prison, even though I yet had a book, I yet had a book deal, I formed a website called Pimpin.com. And after I formed the website, I put up there that my book, which I had not yet written yet, was called The Art of Pimpin', which is, ironically, I never wrote the book, but it's the book that's coming out next. It's my next book. But I wrote this book, I wrote this article, I put this thing on my website, and Simon & Schuster somehow got a hold of my website. And a guy by the name of Jeremy, who was a senior publisher over there at Simon & Schuster, he read my blog on my website, and he noticed that I said that I wanted to become a writer. So what he did, or I wanted to write a book, so what he did, he contacted my management company, Ed, and then Ed contacted me, and then him and I sit down, and he tried to give me a deal. But at that time, we couldn't come to terms because he didn't offer me enough money. I wasn't no damn fool. So I told him, I wanted way more money that he was offering me at the time. So eventually, a few years later, Jeremy got back in contact with me. And once he got back in contact with me, he offered me a better deal. Now, mind you, since I was a little boy, many years had went past since I had this burning desire to be an author. Because I had this desire, because I had this want, because I was hungry and I knew that I wanted this, I began to, I'm talking about just really envision myself with a book. I put the book on my website, even though it was yet published, it was yet written. I still put it on my website. And because I was so hungry and I knew this is what I wanted, eventually I got the book deal. Simon & Schuster called me, and now my book is one of the most successful books in the urban community. It's not a book that sells of that nature like my books sell. My book has grossed millions and millions of dollars for Simon & Schuster, and even landed a healthy fee for myself because I had that burning desire. I believed in myself. I had hope. I had belief. I knew that one day I was going to do it. I knew that I had to teach myself. I knew I had to go to college. I knew I had to learn English 101 and English 102. I knew I had to learn how to use the form to write a book. I knew I had to understand the table of contents. I knew I had to understand what the Library of Congress meant. I knew I had to understand what copyright meant. I had to really educate myself in reference to all of these things in order to achieve the goal that I wanted to achieve. And I did that. Yes, I did that. Now I have one of the most successful books on the planet because I had a burning desire. I really wanted that. I really hoped for it. And I was really hungry. And that's what you got to do. You got to be hungry. That's what desire is all about. Peace.